Hi, Assalamualaikum and a very good day, everyone. So today I'm going to explain and describe a bit to you regarding standard operating procedure, or we normally call as SOP. Okay, so this is not a new word for all of us. We have been listening to the word of SOP beginning from last year. So what is actually SOP in a full version? So before we go into deeper, you have to watch the video that has been attached in column under week 7. Okay, and then from the video you need to know what is the importance of having SOP. So basically when you have SOP, or when you follow the SOP, you know what you are supposed to do, and it is going to be the best way or the suggested way to avoid any accident or mishap at the workplace. Number two, the best way to follow a certain procedure. Okay, for example, when you are performing a task, okay, you have to follow the SOP in order to make sure that the process is successful. And lastly, what needs to be in an SOP and why. Okay, so SOP is actually a document, okay, which describes the operations of a certain work or job in order to ensure its quality. Okay, so you have to follow the process or the procedure to make sure that the quality of the work that you are doing has been achieved or can be achieved. Right. Okay, it is a set of compulsory instructions, systems, procedures or steps which is written, okay, it is written so that other individuals can follow to complete the job safely. So SOP can be prepared by someone before you, or you can also prepare the SOP for others to follow after that. Okay, SOP it is also used to maximizes operational and production requirements. Okay, to maximizes operational and production requirements. So for example, by following the SOP, you can increase the production rate for the company in a month, for example. And without SOP, there is a slight possibility that the production period or production process for the company that you are working with for that particular month is not achievable. Okay, so the purpose of a SOP is to carry out the operations correctly. Okay, so the keyword here is to make sure that the operation can be conducted correctly and always in the same manner. Alright, so even though that you are no longer working in that department, the SOP that you have prepared, okay, can be very useful for the person replacing you because they are or they will be doing the same thing as what you have prepared for them according to the process or procedure. So a SOP should be available at the place where the work is performed. Okay, so meaning that where you are going to perform the task, okay, the SOP should be placed at that location. Okay, so the original version of the SOP should be kept at the secure place. Okay, so you can put it in the main office, for example, but the working copies should be authenticated with stamps and or signatures of authorized person. Okay, so at the workplace, at the location of the process and procedures, for example, you can have the copy of the original version of the SOP, but make sure it is authenticated, okay, with stamps or signatures of the authorized person. So it means that you are following the original version of the SOP. So in this context, there are two types of SOP that you need to know. One is technical SOP. Okay, so this is number one. Number two, it is administrative SOP. So this is number two. So for number one, it focuses more on technical activities such as how to collect a laboratory sample and how to fix the R2 engine. Okay, and for your information, the one that you are going to deal with for the assessment and also for the future employment that you're going to get soon, all right, is going to be on technical SOP, because we use technical SOP to perform a task related to our field of study normally. Okay, all right. On the other hand, for administrative SOP, it highlights on the administrative processes such as reviewing contract documentation and determining organizational training needs. So, in this context, if you are involved with the management division later on, okay, once you have start working, and then somehow after a few years they promoted you to administrative work or management work, so you're going to use administrative SOP. But if you're using your qualification and then you start working with your qualification, so there is a higher chance that you are going to deal with the technical SOP over here. Okay. Alright, so the format of technical SOP, so for your information, the format can vary in the sense that, okay, it depends on the company that you are working. But for UHL 2422 and UHL 2452, okay, we are teaching you the simplest format and the contents that you are going to use for each of the SOP. So this means that, okay, regardless of what kind of format or template that you are going to use later, the contents will be the same. Okay, so the format and length of SOP depend on the steps that are taken to describe the procedures of the work. So somehow the SOP that you are working on is going to be very short, and sometimes it can be longer depending on the work that you are performing. Okay, so it can include a simple one-page hierarchical steps. Okay, so that is one type of SOP. It can be a graphic procedures such as a flowchart and even a few pages of procedural process. Okay, so an organization will have its own format for SOP, and you can follow the following format as a guide to write your technical SOP. So as what I have mentioned to you, your SOP can be in many templates, but what we are teaching you now for UHL 2422 and also UHL 2452 are basically the contents of the SOP. Okay, so SOP can be written by individuals or a team. Okay, it can be by individual or a team performing processes such as, okay, so please bear in your mind there is a possibility in the future that you are going to do or create SOP individually or in a team. Okay, in the sense of shutting down an operation, so there must be a SOP that you have to follow. Okay, repairing a faulty electrical circuit, basic milking process, and building a new machine. So some examples given here are actually one of the many that you are going to deal with when you're going to start working later on. So these are some examples of SOP that maybe you are going to do, or you're going to read, or you are going to create on your own later. So who should write SOP? So people who will perform, okay, or has performed the job. Okay, let's say if there is no SOP before that, and you are going to be the first person performing the job, so you are going to create the SOP. Or let's say somebody before you, okay, your senior has created the SOP, and you will be performing the task replacing them, so you're going to follow the SOP. Right. Number two, people who work together on a job or anybody related with the task. Okay. So for example, if you're going to work in a team, okay, or you are assigned to do the task, so you have to follow the SOP given. And then number three, people who supervise other people doing the job. So let's say if you are the person who will be supervising the task, okay, given or delivered by your subordinates. So you are going to observe them whether they are following the SOP or not, in order to ensure that there will be no mistakes or accident to happen. Okay, number four, safety and health officer. So if you're going to visit the location of the workplace, and then you're going to check whether they are following the standard operating procedure. So the copy of it or the original version of the SOP will be your guidelines. And lastly, for technical writers, in case if you are required to prepare a document explaining about the process and procedure of certain product or certain services. Alright, so who is SOP for? So SOP is useful for the person who will perform a particular job, such as managers, okay, it can be managers, engineers, planners, safety officers, environmental regulators, company representatives, and anybody performing the work. So if you're asking me, sir, do you have a SOP that you have to follow when you are going to teach? Yes, we do have that, but it is not really in the printed version because we have gone through the training for teaching and learning. So there is a certain standard that we have to meet. For example, if we are going to record our session like now, so what am I doing? That is that I have to make sure that my voice is clear enough. There are steps and procedures that I have to follow to make sure that the video can be watched by you later clearly. Okay, when to write and test SOP. So write and test it before a job is begun. Okay, so you have to write the SOP and test it before the job is begun. So let's say if you're going to be the person who prepared the SOP in the first place, so you have to prepare, you have to write it beforehand. Okay, and then test it before putting it into final application. So of course, SOP is a procedure that you have to follow. Okay, it's going to be from the beginning until the end. So before you start performing the task in a mass, so you're going to test it first. Okay, and then revise it after a trial of the job is performed. So for example, if it is a new SOP, so you just run the process using the SOP, and if you find that there is any correction or any amendment that you need to make to the SOP, then you are going to do it. Okay, and then revise it when there is any change to the process or even equipment use. Somehow or sometimes, okay, maybe the machineries that you are going to use are going to be changed over time. So there is a need for you to change the SOP. So the same goes over here. When the machine has been changed to a new one or a new version, so there is a possibility that you might be or you might need to change the SOP that you have been using before. Okay, you also need to rewrite it when new information indicates new process. Okay, for example, if some additional processes will be added to the SOP and it brings to the new outcome, so you have to rewrite your SOP. Okay, the same goes when you have to or when you have new information that suggests new performance. Okay, for example, if you add in these substances to your existing chemical substances, so the outcome will be different. Therefore, you have to rewrite your SOP. And lastly, you update it regularly based on internal and external factors. Okay, for example, okay, if there is any changes in terms of the production line, okay, or maybe in terms of staffing, in terms of raw materials being used, then you have to change your SOP. So effective writing for SOP, number one, please use short sentences because this is not going to be an essay. When people are reading the instruction, they need or they are looking for something that is very tactful. Okay, short but meaningful. All right, so use short sentences because the longer one will be harder to understand and tend to include more than one step. Okay, so several short sentences are usually easier to understand. So please make sure when you are preparing your SOP, it is short in a short version. Okay, use imperative. Imperative here meaning that you are going to use the sense of command. Okay, so in imperative, it means that it is going to be in the sense of command. Okay, so give a command. Shut the door. Switch off the engine. Okay, that kind of imperative. So use imperative instead of passive voice because imperative in the form of command will be easier to understand. So in the passive form, as an example over here, you can see the weight of feed refusals should be recorded in the feeder notebook. So this is in passive form. Okay, in imperative mode, it is going to be like this: record the weight of feed refusals in the feeder notebook. So as you can see over here, alright, in imperative, you have the verb record, bring presented in front of it. So this is a verb. So as you know, a verb will be used when you're going to perform a task or an action. So in Malay, it is called kata kerja. Okay, so when you are writing an SOP using imperative, you're going to put the verb in front of it. Then number 3, make sure that it is concise. So write in a few words as possible, but make sure that the meaning of the words or the sentences that you are writing really meaningful in the sense that they can understand and they can perform the task. Okay, and this is the link for a sample of SOP. You can refer to it on your own. So basically, again, there are 3 steps that you need to follow in order for you to complete the SOP. So make sure that it is short, okay, concise, and also meaningful. Okay, so that's all from me. Alright, if there is any other question, please contact me, and I hope that you now have a clearer understanding about SOP. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and goodbye.